Hey, isn't it over yet? I'm going to be late for my Sunday brunch. That whisper from the front row should never have reached me on stage. Yet the voice, as if carried by a microphone straight into my eardrums, was unmistakable. It belonged to my sister, Isabella. She leaned against the arm of my husband, Lucas, looking as if she couldn't be more bored. "Shoo, Madison's giving her speech," my mother, Eleanor, said, making a token attempt to scold her. But Isabella didn't care. "So what? If we don't hurry, the champagne in the hotel suite I booked is going to get warm." At that moment I could almost hear the sound of my 2 years of effort, my blood-soaked days and sleepless nights, bursting like bubbles and vanishing into the air. This was the auditorium of a prestigious graduate school. While enduring grueling work at a major consulting firm, I had sacrificed sleep and every bit of my private life to earn my MBA and the honor of being valedictorian. As the culmination of all that, I was supposed to deliver a speech of hope for the future on behalf of all graduates. But to my family, my sister's weekly showy brunch parties mattered far more than the turning point of my life. I continued my speech, watching them calmly. Isabella nudged Lucas's elbow. Lucas placed a hand on my mother's shoulder. My mother touched my father's arm. A silent signal passed between them, and then, as if perfectly coordinated, they all rose from their seats at once. It had been only 5 minutes since my speech began. A murmur of confusion rippled through the hall. No one had ever seen an entire family walk out during the valedictorian speech. They didn't even pretend to care about the audience's eyes or my presence on stage. They simply made their graceful way toward the exit. When I saw them disappear beyond the red velvet doors, not a single tear fell. I only heard the quiet sound of something beginning to burn deep inside my heart. That was when I realized my real graduation ceremony was starting right then. I turned back to the microphone and continued my speech, my voice clearer and stronger than before. There were no longer any words left for them. The applause that followed was thunderous and warm. Yet to my ears, it sounded like something happening in a distant world. When I received my diploma and stepped down from the stage, I felt surprisingly calm. Outside the auditorium, the space overflowed with cheers and congratulations. My friends rushed over, saying, "Madison, that was an incredible speech." One after another. I smiled and thanked them, yet I felt a strange sensation, as if the smiling version of myself in the center of that circle and the calm, detached version of myself watching from afar were slowly drifting apart. While my classmates embraced their families and shared their joy, I quietly stepped away from the noise to a more distant spot. As expected, there were no new notifications on my phone screen. Why was I so calm? Why wasn't I crying out of sadness or anger? I knew the answer better than anyone. Because I had known for a long time what kind of people they truly were. And because I had been preparing for this day quietly and meticulously. I had married Lucas during a hectic time, just as I was preparing to enter graduate school. While we were searching for a new home, my mother approached us and said, "Madison, you should live in this house until you finish your MBA. I worry about your health. Besides, living here means you can save on rent, right? You must be exhausted from both work and study, so I'll take care of the cooking and cleaning for you." On the surface, it sounded like a caring offer from a loving mother. But I could see her true intention as clearly as if it were written on her face. She wanted to keep us under her control, both financially and emotionally, and make me responsible for their lives. Just as I was about to refuse, Lucas, sitting beside me, held my hand tightly and said with sincere eyes, "Maybe your mother's right. During these 2 years while you chase your dream, I want to support you, together with your family." In the early days of our marriage he was earnest. I believed him. But from the moment I accepted that suggestion, a twisted relationship of codependence began. In exchange for living rent-free, I'll cover most of the household expenses. That unspoken rule gradually transformed into an expectation that it was only natural for Madison to support the family's extravagant lifestyle. The so-called living expenses I paid became a black box that grew endlessly with their greed. The food costs skyrocketed to several times that of a normal household. Why? Because all the lavish ingredients for Isabella's weekly Sunday brunches were being charged as household expenses. The hors d'oeuvres delivered from luxury hotels, the bottles of champagne costing hundreds of dollars each, all covered by me. Utilities, decorations, event supplies, everything Isabella used to impress her social circle was billed as necessary for the household. In other words, My sister's status in her vanity-filled social circle was literally built on the living expenses I provided. Even Lucas, who had once been passionate and driven, began to change. He used to dream of starting his own design brand, working tirelessly at a small studio. He had supported my decision to pursue graduate studies, genuinely. But as he watched me succeed, taking on major projects, rising in my career, something shifted. His words became bitter. He started skipping work. Then one day, out of the blue, he said, "My current job is killing my creativity. I need some time to find myself." And he quit. That was the beginning of his so-called artist phase. Using the money I earned, he bought expensive art supplies and locked himself in his studio. Yet no artwork was ever completed. Only time slipped away. He justified everything by saying, "I just need time to rediscover myself." My success had eroded his pride. It stripped him of his drive and pushed him into denial, and into that growing emptiness Isabella skillfully slipped in. Before long, among her pretentious brunch friends, Lucas had become known as the enigmatic artist. To be married to an extraordinary woman like Madison, yet remain detached and devoted to art, that's so cool, they said. Lucas, wearing an expensive watch bought with my money, began to speak of his life as though it were philosophy. He was praised for it. And his arrogance grew. The moment I began to suspect there was something between Lucas and Isabella came with a clear trigger. 6 months ago. While checking my credit card statement, my hand froze. There was an unfamiliar charge. An expensive bill from the top-floor bar of a luxury hotel. That day, Lucas had said he was visiting galleries for artistic inspiration. When I confronted him, he replied without a hint of guilt. "Oh, I hit it off with a gallery owner. We just had a few drinks together. It didn't sit right with me, but I let it go." That weekend, however, I saw a photo Isabella posted on social media, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. "Such a lovely surprise. Thank you as always." The caption accompanied a photo of Isabella smiling before a beautiful cocktail, taken at the same hotel bar. And on the glass table I could see the reflection of a familiar men's watch, placed deliberately in frame. Lucas's watch. In that instant, everything clicked into place. Before anger came a cold, absolute certainty. I called my graduate school friend, Natalie, a former journalist with razor-sharp investigative skills. "Natalie, I need a favor. There's someone I want you to investigate." My voice was calm, steady, even to my own surprise. That was the sound of the first gong of my true graduation ceremony. And today the time had finally come to put my plan into action. After the ceremony, I returned home to an empty house and took off my gown. From the back of the closet, I pulled out the outfit I had prepared for this very day. A simple yet elegant silk dress. Bold and free, something the Madison they knew would never have chosen. With a single suitcase in hand, I told no one where I was going and got into a taxi bound for the airport. A few hours later, the plane landed in a tropical paradise far from the mainland United States, Hawaii. As I passed through the gate, a gentle breeze carrying the sweet scent of flowers brushed through my hair. I got into the private car I had reserved and headed toward my real home, a luxurious residence in an upscale neighborhood of Oahu. It was my sanctuary, purchased quietly years ago, known to no one but me. When I opened the door to the modern villa, I was greeted by a breathtaking sight. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows stretched a private beach and the turquoise shimmer of the Pacific Ocean. I stepped out onto the terrace and sank into the daybed beside the infinity pool. Just hours ago I had been standing in a university auditorium. Now that felt like a dream from another lifetime. Then I took out my smartphone, opened my social media app and captured the moment. The endless blue sea, the tropical sunlight reflected in the pool, and a bottle of perfectly chilled champagne waiting to be my toast to freedom. Beneath the photo I wrote, "Sometimes hard work is rewarded in unexpected ways. Here's to my true graduation, and the beginning of a new life." As I pressed post, a faint tremor ran through my fingertips, not from fear but from resolve, the kind that rises before a storm. As expected, only minutes later my once silent phone began to vibrate like mad. Notifications cascaded across the screen like a waterfall. "Madison, what is the meaning of this? Where are you? Call us right now. How could you hide something like this from us, living in such luxury?" The senders were Isabella, Lucas, my father and my mother. Their precious Sunday brunch had been completely ruined by my post. I could easily picture them, faces twisted with rage, frantically typing messages on their phones, when just moments ago they'd been sipping champagne and chatting gracefully. They could never tolerate the fact that I was living a life far more elegant, far more real, than the illusion of luxury they had built on my money. The tool that was supposed to exist only to support them had begun to shine brighter than they did themselves. That truth was something their fragile pride could never bear. Missed calls quickly filled my screen. 64 in just 30 minutes. Madison, where are you? What's going on? Call me right now. We're husband and wife, aren't we? Stop this ridiculous stunt immediately. Come home right now. We'll talk after that. But the real masterpiece was the message from my sister, Isabella. Wait, are you in Hawaii? You never told me you were traveling. Unbelievable. We're family, you're obviously inviting us too, right? Let's have the next Sunday brunch there. Yes, that's perfect. I glanced over their messages and couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. Family? Husband and wife? Is that what you call family? The kind that can so easily abandon me to attend a party while I'm giving the speech of my life? I turned my vibrating phone face down on the table and quietly popped the cork of my champagne. They still had no idea how serious this was. They must have thought I had simply gone on an emotional getaway. But unfortunately for them, my plan was far from impulsive. I had been preparing for this day for months. With my glass in hand, I picked up my phone again and opened the shared folder with Natalie. Inside were the countless truths she had gathered and organized perfectly over several months. I started by posting the first file to social media. It contained a few photos and a short video. Sunday, June 8, 2025, 11:15 a.m. Graduate School Commencement. The caption accompanied photos showing my family of 4 standing up all at once and walking out of the auditorium, captured clearly from multiple angles. Natalie had recorded everything from the back of the audience. In the video, Isabella could be seen yawning with boredom, urging Lucas to leave. Even with just this post, the comment section erupted in chaos. But my counterattack had only just begun. I watched calmly as the first post spread like wildfire. The comments were filled with outrage directed at my family. Yet their true moment of fear was still to come. Next, I opened the folder Natalie had nicknamed the Final Weapon. Inside that folder were horrifying proofs of betrayal, evidence concerning my husband, Lucas. I held my breath and made my second post. Title: The Final Destination of His Journey of Self-Discovery. Attached were multiple photos of Lucas and my sister Isabella secretly meeting at a luxury hotel lounge. They were seen walking arm in arm, leaning close together, and eventually slipping into the same room, trying not to be noticed. It was unmistakably beyond anything that could be called a relationship between a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law. And the shock didn't end there. The folder also contained evidence that Lucas had been regularly seeing another young woman, someone completely different from Isabella. She was a blonde, aspiring influencer with a modest following online. With the money he had deceived me into giving him, he had bought her attention and affection. The evidence Natalie gathered was disturbingly vivid. Photos of the two sharing a private meal at an upscale restaurant, gazing into each other's eyes. A video of Lucas giving her a designer handbag for her birthday. While indulging in his affair with Isabella, he had also been satisfying another twisted desire: to dominate a younger, attractive woman with money. All of it funded by the income one had worked myself to the bone to earn. Alongside the photos, I posted unedited screenshots of my credit card statements. They revealed exactly what Lucas had spent the money on: the art supplies he had so passionately claimed. At the end I wrote this. This is the true face of the wonderful family that raised and supported me. A sister who prioritized her own party over my valedictorian speech. A husband who betrayed me with her. And together they devoured my hard-earned savings. Today I have decided to end this family. I am graduating from them. Everything I needed to do was complete. I placed my endlessly buzzing phone quietly on the table, lay back on the poolside chair and slowly closed my eyes. The next day, after completely resetting both my mind and body in Hawaii, I returned to the US. What I saw when I walked back into my house was the aftermath of the bomb I had dropped on social media. The place had already turned into a hideous battlefield. Unbelievable. You mean I wasn't the only one? You bought that young woman designer gifts too. Isabella's beautiful face twisted with hatred as she grabbed Lucas by the collar. It seemed she had foolishly believed their relationship was something special, an illicit bond that existed only between the two of them. She had felt a perverse sense of superiority in secretly taking her younger sister's husband. No, Isabella, that was just a fling. You're the one I truly care about, I swear. Lucas stammered, drenched in sweat, repeating pathetic excuses. But to Isabella, whose pride had been torn to shreds, his words only poured oil on the fire. Shut up. The only thing you've ever truly loved is Madison's credit card. My father and mother stood frozen, unable to stop the ugly scene unfolding before them. They simply watched helplessly as their fragile pretense of family collapsed in my absence. Things seem quite lively here without me, I said quietly, but my voice carried through every corner of the room. The four of them froze as if time itself had stopped. Then all at once they turned their hateful, blame-filled eyes toward me, the one they deemed the cause of everything. Madison, how dare you come back here? You've ruined us. My father roared. I stepped slowly into the room and faced them. Ruined you? How fascinating. Tell me, who was it that abandoned his daughter on the stage of her graduation to attend Isabella's pretentious party instead? As a father, have you ever once acknowledged my effort, my achievements, my career, for what they truly are? My father's face turned crimson as words failed him. Next came my mother, pleading tearfully. Please, Madison, stop this. Delete those posts. I can't even show my face in the neighborhood anymore. I replied, my tone cold as ice. Do you have any idea how many years I've spent killing parts of myself just to avoid the judgment of others, yours included? You must have noticed long ago how warped this family had become. And yet you chose silence. You chose peace over truth. Is that what you call a mother's love? I didn't mean for it to be like this, she murmured weakly before collapsing in tears. Then Isabella, in a hysterical fit, pointed at me like a madwoman. This is all your fault. You didn't pay enough attention to Lucas. You're a failure as a wife. A failure as a wife. I smiled slowly, pityingly at her, as though gazing upon something tragically small. Yes, perhaps you're right. I must be a failure as a wife. After all, I never could have imagined that my husband would be having a long-term affair with my own sister. How foolish of me. Too bad, Isabella. To him you were nothing more than one of many playthings. You thought you were special, didn't you? But in truth, you're just someone who can't find her own worth without leeching off others. The color drained from Isabella's face. Completely cornered and without allies, Lucas crawled to my feet as if clinging to his last hope. Madison, I'm sorry. I'm really truly sorry. Let's start over. You need me, don't you? I can't live without you. I know, let's go back to Hawaii together. You must have been lonely there by yourself, right? The moment I heard those pitiful, idiotic words, I made my final decisive move. Actually, Lucas. I took a document from my handbag and slid it across the table toward him. It was the thick title deed to the villa standing in the luxurious neighborhood of Hawaii. That wasn't a vacation, I said softly. It was a homecoming, to my real home. The one I bought years ago. Lucas, Isabella, and my parents stared at the document in disbelief. In the owner section, of course, there was only my name written clearly. That's impossible. There's no way you could afford that on a consultant's salary, my father muttered in a trembling voice. Of course not, I replied calmly. Not with the salary you think I earn. Then I revealed the final truth I had kept hidden all these years. Back in college, I started an IT startup with a few classmates. You all thought it was just a hobby project, didn't you? But it grew so much that it became a service people called a social phenomenon. A few years ago, I sold the rights to a global corporation. I smiled faintly. Would you like to know how much I made? It's worth dozens of times more than what any of you could earn in your entire lives. I built that fortune with my own hands, completely on my own. The revelation struck them like lightning. I placed another document in front of Lucas. A divorce agreement prepared by my lawyer. Our marriage ends today, I said. I won't demand alimony. Instead, you'll repay every cent you spent using my cards in full. If you have any objections, we'll settle it in court. Lucas could only stammer, before collapsing where he stood. I looked around at the four of them, hollow, broken, and declared clearly, you deserve each other. The four of you can stay in this little box, licking each other's wounds, throwing blame around, and living out your miserable lives together. And just before I closed the door, I left them with my final words. The price you paid for ruining my graduation turned out to be quite high, didn't it? But this isn't punishment. It's simply the inevitable consequence of your own choices. Leaving them standing there in shock, I opened the front door without looking back. After that, I was flooded with messages. Apologies from my parents, pleas for reconciliation from Lucas. But behind those words, I saw no genuine remorse. Only the shallow, transparent desire to regain their comfortable lives and their convenient source of money. I ignored every one of them and without hesitation, blocked all their contacts. 6 months have passed since I began living in my Hawaiian villa and started my real life. My dear friend Natalie, who had been my partner in revenge, and is now my business partner, keeps me updated on my family's situation. My ex-husband Lucas has lost everything. Because of my public revelation, he's now known as the unemployed man who lived off his wife's wealth and cheated with her sister. That miserable reality is all that remains of him. He now lives alone in a small, dim apartment on the outskirts of town. A man with pride as fragile as his could never hold a proper job, so he survives on day-to-day labor, working with his hands just to get by. As for Isabella, her weekly Sunday brunches came to an inevitable end. The so-called friends who once flocked to her, drawn only by her fake wealth and status, vanished like insects scattering from the light. Social media was flooded with insults, calling her a fraud and a parasite. She deleted her accounts and disappeared completely from society. My parents, who had always valued appearances above all else, are now living through their own personal hell. The neighborhood buzzes with gossip. Did you hear how Madison was treated by that family? Her husband and sister were having an affair. Unbelievable. They now live quietly, suffocating under the mixed stares of pity and contempt that follow them everywhere. And I live in my villa in Hawaii now. The new company I founded continues to grow steadily, surrounded by partners I can truly trust. On weekends, I sometimes host small gatherings with close friends. Simple, joyful moments filled with laughter and genuine warmth. Not the kind of parties meant to impress anyone, but ones that celebrate connection and peace. Here, in the silence and freedom I finally claimed, I will keep walking forward, living my real life at last.